Hi everybody. So today we're going to talk a little bit about training. Training is the combination between the will to train, in other words, the mental aspect, the ability to train, the physical aspect, and then the nutritional aspect, which will make it possible to do the physical and the mental aspect of it properly. So if you are hungry and not in a good state, your mind is probably not going to be in a good state and you're not going to do a very successful training session. However, if you are fueled properly, whichever way you fuel yourself, you probably have a better mindset. You're more resilient in your mind, and you will be more motivated to do your training session. Now, your training session is what is appropriate for you, and that depends on your physical health, nutrition, mental state, what you want to achieve, when you want to achieve it, what your goals, etc. So it's not the same for anybody or for everybody. So for me, nutrition is the very most important aspect of the whole thing. So being well fed, and I'm using the carnivore diet because it gives me, in my opinion, the necessary amino acids to sustain the mitochondria and the fat that goes with it, which is only basically animal fats. They sustain the energy. Whatever energy I need, I'll get out of fat, whether I eat it or whether it is used from the body fat. The better my nutritional aspect, the better is my mental state. In other words, I wake up in the morning and I feel great. I work all day long, or I cycle all day long, or I go for a tour and I feel great. That motivates me to either train more or add on another 20 or 30 Ks on the daily camping trip, choose a further destination, and it's awesome. It really is awesome if you say, okay, I've done my 80 Ks, but let's do another 20 or 30 Ks to the next destination. Because you would have then a bit more time at the next destination to do some sightseeing or whatever tickles your fancy. So if we look at training, training is the process of building up muscle fibers, endurance, lung capacity, heart capacity, whatever else there is that you can build up from a physical standpoint. So the way I see it for cycling, for example, is I use the 80-20 method. 80% is in the zone 2 and 20% is high intensity. And over and above that, it's strength training, primarily using the body weight and free weights. I don't really like using machines except for my climbing wall, and a bit more about that later on. But if you look at the 80-20 ratio, 80% is in the zone 2. So if you take your weekly schedule of cycling, and let's say you do 10 hours, just for example, then 8 of those hours are in zone 2. So let's first look at what is zone 2. Zone 2 is where you can comfortably have a conversation whilst you're training. That's one way of looking at it. The other way is, if you look at your breathing, you got to get conscious about how you breathe, how intense you breathe. So if you can do your zone 2 exercise and you can keep your mouth shut and only inhale and exhale through your nose without straining, it must be natural, then you're probably in your zone 2. The next option is your heart rate. So you would have to know what is your maximum heart rate, and then you can subtract your age, etc. And you probably get to anything around 130 beats per minute. So let's say between 118 to 130 beats per minute. So in that zone is your zone 2. But it's very individual. Every person has a different zone 2. And your zone 2 also changes. The fitter you get after extended training, you will have a lower heart rate for the same activity, or for the same heart rate you will have a higher output, in other words a higher average speed or higher wattage, whatever. The other measure is basically measuring your power output. If you have a power meter system installed on your bike, you can say, okay, maybe according to the calculations or the tests you've done, you see that your zone 2 power output is, let's say, 150 watts output. So it's 150 watts you can sustain continuously while breathing naturally through your nose without straining and having a heart rate of, let's say, 125 beats per minute. So you got to find the combination between your breathing, your heart rate, and your power output. That will give you a clear indication on what is sustainable for you, and that you can stipulate then on your extended tours. Let's say you do a 200 or 300, 400 kilometer tour, like a Audax, then you know at what intensity you can ride. And if you exceed it, you will probably have difficulty in the last 20% of your ride. And that is really where you got to pace yourself for. So it's actually critical to understand the combination between those three factors, breathing, heart rate, power output. And it doesn't really matter what bike you use. If you use a racing bike or gravel bike or a camping bike or a trekking bike, it doesn't really matter. The only difference will be that you have a different average speed. So I don't like talking about top speeds because that can be downhill or whatever, so it's really irrelevant. The average speed over the daily activity, whether it's 20 kilometers or 100 kilometers or 200 kilometers, it doesn't matter. It's your average speed, your average heart rate, and let's say the average breathing method you used. So if you use mainly zone 2 breathing, then that is your guideline. And from there you can work out how you have to pace yourself for, let's say, an endurance ride, a fully loaded camping bike, let's say 30 kilogram, with 1,000 meters of ascent during a day, and maybe you do 100 or 120 kilometers per day, and it can be maybe raining, you might have a headwind, it might be cold. So those are the external factors which will impact the total duration or total distance for the day, provided you stay within your three parameters with breathing, heart rate, and power output. that you can't change. So keeping that constant and having the variables on the day will determine the distance traveled on the day with the bike you chose. So this is basically a summary on the training aspect. In the next video I will go more into the nutritional aspect, and in the next video I will do the mental training. And I think for me it's just as fascinating how the body responds and how you can manipulate your body to achieve wonderful things. Really, it is amazing. So, having said that, please like and subscribe. Ring the bell, then you'll get noticed about the new videos. And remember, every journey starts with a first pedal stroke. And how many pedal strokes you do, it depends on yourself. So I say, let's get going. The day is still young. Got a few hours left. Let's do a few more kilometers. See you. Ciao.